So whenever the quizzes are uploaded and that you are able to view them at 5 p.m. in the evenings, I'll likely also have the audio just kind of streaming along throughout the slides, and I'll put kind of like an indicator at the bottom of the slide for when you can just toggle through and go on to the next one and keep up with the lecture, okay? If you do end up having any issues with the lecture being synced up with audio, please let me know right away. That way I can get onto Moodle and try to get it fixed for you guys as fast as possible. So let's get started. We'll talk about a couple of things. We'll kind of recap over the series of events that have happened over the last couple of weeks. Has everybody been having a really good time this semester so far? Oh, no, me neither. But, I mean, hopefully, you know, as I would hope, like most all of your other professors, like we're here to guide you guys through this, you know. It's unprecedented times, but hopefully we're going to create an environment where you guys feel safe enough and secure enough and able enough to continue on with your studies, right? So, first 2 weeks, what we did, we watched the click here to get started video. Did everybody get a chance to view that? And it was pretty straightforward. You guys were kind of clear on the content and what you're expected to be doing. Okay, good. Then you watched the Protect the Nest video, which I'm sure you guys are still really happy about having to watch as many times throughout every single course that you've had. Bit redundant, but you guys enjoyed it? No, of course not. Okay, so then you signed up to attend classes this week. I'm still trying to generate an entire roster of those who are going to completely online. Now, you are not at any point in time required to come to classes, okay? This is just a space in which if you are the type of person that does best in a physical place at a physical time, and some of us really need that external environment in order to get our minds kind of within like the whole academic learning, then this is what is provided to you. If you don't feel safe, or if you feel kind of sick, even slightly sick, or God forbid hungover in college, then don't come in. You know, you could do this online, you could watch the lectures, you could watch the quizzes and all that kind of stuff that will be available to you, and you can do it remotely. If you do end up getting sick or anything like that, you know, it's still available to you. So just know that, but also give me a heads up. That way I can kind of keep the roster going and know that, you know, hey, when those of you who do sign up to come into class, you won't have to take those lecture quizzes. If you're doing it remotely, for whatever reason, you do have to take the lecture quizzes, okay? And then we reviewed the writing expectations section. The writing expectations section is applying to our ethnographic formal like assignments that will be turned in. And the reason is because at the very end of the semester, we're going to take each one of these small incremental assignments and synthesize them together into your final report. Because the final report, when you hear it, sounds really daunting, like it's a giant task. But since we're already in the process of doing it, all you would have to do at the end of the semester, it'll be really easy, is copy and paste. So long as you adhere to the formatting criteria, it should be streamlined. Like you really, like at the end of it, I'm going to be giving you guys like 2 weeks to put it together because I'm sure there will be hiccups. But if it's properly done, you could do it in an hour. So when I say adhere to these criteria, do your best to try to follow along with that criteria. That way, whenever I show you how to do the table of contents and have everything kind of pre-programmed in there, that you will be able to do it as efficiently as possible and without a bunch of hiccups where you're like, what did I do? You know? Especially because that last 3 weeks of the semester, we're going to be working remotely. And so trying to communicate and show you guys how to do stuff, like I will always try to provide videos if you guys are struggling or whatever it might be, just to help you through that process. But that it will not be as challenging as it would sound at the very beginning of the semester, right? Okay. So if you have questions about that, now is a really great time to ask. If you're not into like publicly speaking in a classroom setting, which believe me, whenever I first went to college, I was all like, the thought of talking out loud was really intimidating, even if it was just for a question. So if you're more comfortable with that, that's perfectly fine too. So We looked at ethnographic assignments turn-in section. So all of those are in the same section. And I know it kind of seems a little separate from our weekly content, but hopefully by the end of the semester, when you have everything turned in, you really won't have to go through a huge ordeal to look for each one of the assignments. It'll already be organized for you and in a specific area. So as soon as you're like, okay, well, I need to plug in ethnographic assignment 4 into this section, so I need to copy and paste it. You don't have to like rummage through all of your old files and it's like off somewhere in the ether somewhere, and you can't find it. It'll be there for you, and also it'll be there for you through Moodle in case your system crashes. How many of you guys have ever experienced like an entire system failure or crash and you've lost all your content and you have 0 backups? Yeah, no, me too. Oh, and it's traumatizing because you're like, I've worked really hard and now I have nothing, and I can't even, like, what am I gonna do? It's gone. So this is just another redundancy system. I've developed multiple redundancy systems throughout my academic career, just because of having the moments in which I've lost that. So I'm trying to give to you a section where, just in case, if it really like is this apocalyptic moment where the whole computer crashes, you'll still be able to log on to Moodle and pull your files and get your work done, okay? So, and then you did your turn in your Cornell Notes template. So the template is really a way, like, you can kind of use as we progress with doing our journals for this process. It's kind of a way for you to actually have something as a resource to you that can help you organize your thoughts. I remember whenever I wrote my master's thesis, this saved me because it was able to organize everything for me by time and date. And later on, when we're doing our analysis of these ethnographic sites, you might want to be like, hey, I remember writing about this, but I can't remember when. And if you have everything kind of organized and put into various sections, you can quickly pour through your own notes and be like, it's right here, not a big deal. If you don't choose to use it after these first initial assignments, you don't have to, but it was a template that I wanted you guys to make sure to know how to construct and use for your own purposes. So we've done that. Then you did your ethnographic assignment, community identification. And so was there a lot of confusion as to the nature of what ethnography is, and then in turn what ethnography is? You guys are pretty clear about what that is. And so, yeah, your ethnographic work would have been normally what would have been done within this class, except we kind of had to do a slight pivot because of the nature of the current climate that we live in. I can't ethically send you out to a physical place and put you at risk. I do have a responsibility to keep you guys safe. And know that it's just for your best interest, one way or another. But it also gives us this really cool opportunity to kind of look at how people socially navigate through social media or through the internet, because it's been a long established thing. But as you can kind of see with how things are in social media, it's almost chaos. Like, there doesn't seem to be much etiquette. There's trolls running around everywhere. Things are just going haywire. It's been a very long time since I've been in high school, but we didn't have social media back then. And so I didn't have to deal with any type of drama in the social media context. It was just either at school or within your friends group, but it's become so explosive at this point in time, and nobody knows how to wrangle it in. So these, like, ethnographic studies are really kind of the building blocks in which we will probably and hopefully apply to future generations on how we socially navigate such large systems. It's said, the human brain can really only process socially in regards to one another 150 people at any given period in time, right? To know about them, to care about them, to understand that they're a part of your community. And anything beyond that becomes almost unmanageable. And so now we're faced with a period in time where we are kind of reaching out to people from all across the globe and into larger communities. So we're really, I would say, faltering, kind of like babies in that setting, trying to learn to walk. And so hopefully with something like an ethnographic study, we can start to identify those social norms, those social cues, how people interact with one another, and hopefully do it a little bit better as we continue on. So it's kind of a cool task. The opportunity is here for us to be able to learn about social interaction. So then we did journal 1. And that's just to kind of get you guys like started, put yourselves in that mentality. Once again, journals are really, really, really informal, in stark contrast to your ethnographic assignments, which are formal. So your journals are for you. You can have misspellings, you could have whatever format you want, you could do whatever structure seems to work for you. Because it really is kind of like your Dear Diary. It is your way of being able to observe what's going on whenever you sit down and you're observing your ethnographic sites throughout the semester. This is where you're going to kind of take your notes. You can kind of see what's going on. You can have your screenshots, you can have conversations, you can have like all that type of stuff, or thoughts along the way where you're like, hey, I noticed this. This is kind of different. And so you would take note of that. So ethnographic assignment 2, you did survey of 3 sites. So within the first one, you guys identified a bunch of different communities, right? A bunch of different social media sites in which you could possibly look for a virtual microculture. And then you were narrowing it down. And by the end of this week, you're going to really hone in on one particular one. And so I used, I think, my husband's Mycology site, which is really kind of a cool site. Like, I mean, they share information, they talk to one another, they are giving like, hey, during this time you can go out and find morels right now in real time, where there's just like, it was perfect weather. I went and hunted a bunch of morel mushrooms. Has anybody ever had a morel mushroom? No? Yes? Right, and they're delicious. They're a delicacy. And so here they are, like just people they've never actually met in real life, sharing information about a common interest. And we can do it with anything. And so it gets really specific. And so this is essentially what we're trying to identify for you guys. Something that you can work with and that you can observe, that you can learn how to socially interact and how social interaction becomes really important. I think I'd also mention something about the esports arena that's here on campus, and that a student had done a study with that, which is it's kind of funny because it is looking at a physical space in a social context for ethnography that becomes virtual. And so now we're kind of drawing it back, but there were dynamics in which they were like, look, in order for them to be a good teammate, they didn't have to be the best player. In fact, those who were really, really good players who had no teamwork skills were not actually allowed to be on the team. They're like, no, we don't want them. What would they do? Nothing. But the communication skills became really important. And he was able to identify that through his ethnographic research. Really kind of cool. So, week 1's lecture video and associated quiz. We all kind of saw that. Was the quiz okay? Not too challenging? No, they shouldn't be. They should just be like, hey, we're all on the same page. No big deal. And then we did week 1's learning module. If you did not do great on the learning module, know that I've given more than one try available to you guys. So if you didn't like the grade you had for these first 2 weeks of them, you can go back and take it again and do it again, okay? Cool. And then week 2's lecture video and associated quiz. We watched the TED Talks, Lessons in Digital Anthropology. What'd you guys think about that? It's okay. It was kind of old. It was from 2013, so a different time, 7 years ago. And then 7 years ago, in terms of any type of technological innovation, is eons. It's such a huge difference, And so you posted to the forum so that you can kind of get your minds put into the game, So this week's lecture content, I'm going to give you guys a breakdown what we're going to talk about this week, what assignments that you're going to have, that kind of thing. That way we're always kind of on the same page and that we're flowing through this with confidence. So, lecture content, We're going to talk about ethics. I know it sounds super boring because it is, but I'm going to try to not make it as boring. But it's really, really important. It's important for me as an educator to make sure that you guys know what the ethical standards are for our practices. But also before you go out navigating into these social climates, that you know that you have a responsibility, because right now I want you to imagine yourself as a researcher. From this point on, you are a researcher. And there's a lot of pride that comes along with being a researcher, but there's a lot of responsibilities as well. Who's familiar with Stan Lee? What is it?
He's the person that directed like movies or
Yeah.
something to do with movies.
He had a lot to do with movies, and he had a lot to do with comics, and even more so superheroes, right? And it was kind of his writing where he was like, with great power comes great responsibility. In these moments, we are really looking through an aperture of human nature that allows us to kind of have an edge up in understanding the world around us. But there's responsibilities that go along with that. So it is my ethical duty to make sure that you guys are clear on what those things are, right? So, and then Wednesday during the lecture, we're going to talk about important anthropological concepts. And then hopefully next week we can kind of do a virtual activity. I'm still trying to figure out how exactly we're going to apply it. That will kind of get you guys on the same wavelength as far as these terms that we use as anthropologists, so that you can apply them and know how to recognize them whenever you see them in your microcultures, okay? There's a few things to be turning in this week. We have Ethnographic Assignment 3, Online Site Selection. And I will go into detail at the end of this lecture about what is expected from that assignment. But just know that it's always going to be due, the same week. And it should be, that you guys are doing this remotely and everything, that you should have some time, to be able to get it figured out. This one is not a really challenging one. It's just making the decision. Unless you're like me, who has selection anxiety. Have any of you guys gone shopping before, and then you look at the selection and you get a lot of anxiety and you always feel you're going to choose the wrong one and that it's somehow going to have some huge impact on your future? I do that with birthday cards. And it's like the worst thing. I'm like, it's just a birthday card. I ended up trying to get my stepson a birthday card, and I couldn't make a decision between 3 different ones at Walmart, so I bought 10. I was like, I'm just going to buy these 10, and that's it. And that's how so I get it. But just know it's your site. Know that it's something that you should definitely be interested in. Take advantage of this opportunity and think of something that you've always kind of been curious about, kind of wanted to know a little bit more about, but that just didn't have the time or didn't have the pressure. Sometimes whenever I think about studies that I've done, I'm like, I'd really like to do that. But whenever I have somebody keeping me accountable and giving me deadlines, I'm like, okay, no, it's going to get done. It looks good, So take advantage of this time to be able to apply something like that, right? If you have an interest in something like hunting morel mushrooms, and you have like a secret interest in like aviation, but it's like these really like old school pilot things that there's only a group on some obscure site that really gets invested into it, Like this is kind of your way of being able to invest some of that time and understand more about it. And of course, journal too. It's going to give you the opportunity to kind of brainstorm various different things that are related to the assignment. Kind of do the journals before you do the assignments. That way you can get your thoughts organized, okay? Then we have the weekly tasks. And these, of course, are always within the weekly sections. And the weekly tasks, of course, this week are going to be to take the quizzes on the days that you're not attending class. Post to the forum. And that's it. You just have those 2 things to kind of do. And then those 2 other assignments. So this should be really low key as far as the volume of coursework. They should be pretty consistent. You won't have a lot other than really focusing on your ethnographic assignments, taking care of those couple tasks during the week, and your journals. So let's talk about ethics for today's lecture. And I would love to be able to tell you guys that throughout human research that people have always ethically done their best to treat people with dignity. But that's not really the case. So we'll talk about the lecture. We'll discuss the assignment in depth and Journal 2 more in depth. So let's get started. First thing I want you guys to do is watch 5 unethical experiments.